David, thanks.
It's great to be here.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. Always be closing. I love that newsletter plug at the beginning. Amazing. And sign up for that. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I am very interested. You have sort of a unique perspective on the role that big tech has played in society and the problems it's created in terms of loneliness. And you think big tech should help fix that problem. In fact, I think you brought a slide here, a picture that we'll put up on the screen. Tell me what's happening. I see a yellow line going straight up. The other one's less important, but what does that yellow line tell us?
I mean, this is a line that should frighten everyone. So this is the amount of time people are spending alone and over the years, right? From age 20 to 30 to 40, 60, and beyond. And the reason I think it's so frightening is because it is a powerful force. Actually, Mike already mentioned this. I mean, and by the way, this is sort of before COVID, to be clear. This is not COVID happening. This is all kinds of things in society. And Mike already mentioned, like, being together is really important. It turns out to be important for mental health. It turns out to be important for sort of experiencing the world, having their best lives. And I mean, we're at a company who only exists to get people out of their house and kind of connected with others. So I think it's very important from a business perspective, but from a societal perspective, this is not a happy line.
And you are a tech company.
Yeah.
You say tech bears responsibility for this loneliness epidemic, but because your app gets people out, gets them connected, you're part of the solution?
Well, I mean, so let's think about both sides of that equation. You know, how can you connect technology to this? Well, think of the number of minutes you're spending on your phone every day. And it's crazy. I think, I'm gonna get the number wrong, but I think people on average check their phone something like 130 times a day, something like 130. So every single time you do that, you're going inside yourself. Every single time, regardless of physically where you are, mentally you're going inside yourself. And then what happens? You're sitting at home at night, and you're thinking, oh, should I go out or should I not? Netflix is awesome, right? You know, White Lotus is amazing. Severance is fantastic. I've got a theory about White Lotus I'd like to share with you right now. No, but it's just unbelievable. And so it's so great. And then, you know, DoorDash is amazing, all these companies, but their business model depends, it's not their purpose. It's just sort of an unintended side effect. But the purpose is you're spending more time in sort of isolation. And so our job, in a sense, not the business objective, but maybe the social objective, is to serve and connect people.
Lyft is an app that gives people rides to different places. You are not doing delivery with Lyft. And I find that interesting because your main competitor, obviously, that's a big part of their business.
Who's that?
You might have heard of them, Uber. Tell me why you're not in the delivery business.
Yeah, we're in the serve and connect business. That's the business we're in. And look, there are 160 billion rides that people take every year in their own car. But it turns out having somebody else drive you around is pretty cool. You can hang out, you text in the back seat, you can do whatever you want. And so we think it's just a better way, and that's why we're going like crazy. So, you know, if you wanna, I think a good recipe for doing stuff sort of in a mediocre way is to do, you know, 10 different things. And so rather than doing 10 different things, we're doing something really well. And it turns out we're doing better than they are, since you bring them up. For example, a year ago, well, let's just say right now we pick you up about 40 seconds faster than those guys do. So, which is pretty cool because we're a smaller company than they are. So I think focus is constraints provide enormous, you know, creativity, and focus, I think, is what forces you to get to a new level.
Okay, so you talked about the human connection. At the same time, you and your competitor are both getting into autonomous vehicles where there is no driver at all, so you will be alone in the car. Tell me a little bit about your strategy, because it's evolved, right? Initially, I believe Lyft was going to develop your own autonomous vehicle technology. You've come a long way from there. What have you learned? What is the right way to go at autonomy?
So the first thing to say is autonomous vehicles are going to happen. And just not that you were suggesting anything different, but maybe just so everyone in this room knows it. There's really no question. And again, it's good technology. It's safer than human drivers. It not only knows the rules of the road, it follows the rules of the road. So it will come. Now, it will take a long time to come. There are regulatory issues, of course. There are technical issues, of course. There's just weather issues, of course. I mean, there are all these things. But it will come. So then, as a company that's in the business that we're in, we have to figure out how do we embrace that. And what we have found is that we believe, as autonomous vehicles enter our platform, right, as we partner with the types of companies that maybe at one point we thought we might be ourselves, and then we realized it's billions of dollars too expensive, so let someone else do it. So just like we decided that, we think a lot of companies in the AV tech space are going to decide, you know what, we don't also need to build a rideshare network, right? We can leave that to the people who've already done a good job of that. And then we can partner. We have a partnership with a company called May Mobility, which we've announced we're actually going live with in Atlanta later this year. In fact, something I'll actually announce right now is those rides on an autonomous platform, which will be in a Toyota Sienna. It's a whole sort of outfitted thing. They'll be the exact same rides as a normal Lyft ride, so it'll be something you don't have to pay extra for. Anyway, that's something that we're excited about doing because we think it's going to be a great experience for riders. And interestingly enough, we think there's a role for drivers in the future as well, which I can talk about.
Well, let's talk about the pricing for a second, since you brought it up. So same price as a driven vehicle.
Yep.
I think it should be less, since there's no driver, or I'm not paying anybody's salary. Is that the future? Will it be cheaper to ride in an autonomous vehicle?
So this is a great question. So I think, if it's cheaper, I think it's great for the rideshare industry for sure, because it'll expand the market. Anytime you can provide a good service at a lower price, the market gets bigger. Even if it's not cheaper, I think it'll expand the market because it's a differentiated service. Whether or not it is or is not, I think it's early to tell. Right now, an autonomous vehicle costs about $200,000, right? With the vehicle itself, maybe it's a Jaguar, right? That's an expensive car. Then you put on top of it a bunch of sensors, those are expensive. Then you have operational costs behind it, those are expensive. So, and then remember, weird things like insurance, very hard to know. Will insurance be more expensive? Well, less expensive because it's safer, or more expensive because the sensors are expensive and the insurance companies don't have the data. I think it's quite hard to know. I think the most likely scenario is over the very long term, it does become less expensive. But I think in the short and medium term, the sort of novelty and other things about it kind of make up for the fact that we're not paying drivers.
Who is going to own those $200,000 cars? Who's going to maintain them? Who's going to charge them? Who's going to clean them when your toddler throws up or spills their peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
By the way, it's not just your toddler. It turns out Saturday nights, a lot of people throw up.
I think there's probably going to be a lot of things going on in those autonomous vehicles that we don't want to ask about.
Again, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Anyway, so this is, I think, super. Okay, we actually published, and this is something you're obviously in the transportation world, and you have a newsletter, which is awesome. I would say as content for that newsletter, take a look at something we published a couple weeks ago, which is kind of the value chain for AVs, because I think it's very interesting. You have the technology guys, right? So those are the Waymos and the Zooks and the Mobileye's of the world. Then you've got the OEMs, the GMs or the Jaguars or VWs, whoever it might be over time, Toyota for sure. Then you have the financing folks, right? Someone's got to own these. We have a deal with a company called Marubeni. I'll come back to that in 2 more seconds. Then you have this fleet management. We'll also mention this. Who's going to keep them charged? Who's going to keep them clean? Who's going to keep them maintained? Who's going to reboot them? When they sort of, so, right, and that's really a thing. Anyway, and then you've got the marketplace. Supply and demand coming together millions of times every day, priced, all the rest. And then you've got the kind of demand generation, right? What's the app you're going to use? All these things. So all these different pieces exist in the value chain. Lyft obviously plays a role in some of them, and others, we completely do not. To the financing side, these are expensive assets. And so there, I suspect, going to be companies that are in the job of buying fleets of cars or fleets of anything. Marubeni, they started in the industrial, agricultural equipment, and they're a Japanese company, so they have a low cost of capital, and they've got other ways to sort of spread their risk around. So anyway, I think people are going to buy them in bulk at the beginning, individually over time, and then they're going to want them, asset utilization. It's kind of this asset under management game that, a lot of other industries have. Airlines do as well.
So what do you think of the model that Tesla CEO Elon Musk is putting forth, which is that people who own Teslas are just going to let them out to drive themselves around town and give people rides while they're not using them? Is that a realistic form of autonomy?
So I think that's a very interesting idea. And I think that the answer, briefly, is yes. And here's, but you have to be able to imagine and kind of see the future for this. So I think, there will be a time, let's call it a decade from now, where buying a car without AV would be like buying a car without a radio, or without lane assist, maybe more to the point, lane assist or cruise control, right? Cruise control, you remember, it came out in the 60s, 70s, it was very sort of clunky and mechanical. Then it became this kind of computer thing. Now you have lane assist that kind of nudges your car around, and you've got, obviously ABS brakes, all these things that start out as kind of niche and then they become very central. AV will be like that, right? Most cars, they'll be, just like you can buy whatever, you can buy classic and old cars today, or cars that are manual transmission. Maybe that's another example of something you could buy today, but you're probably making a choice to do so. And so in that world where everyone has AV technology, then the question becomes, well, why shouldn't I be able to push a button and put it on a network? We have a program already that we're designing called Lyft Ready. This is with our partner Mobileye, who is a leader in driver assist, and they aspire to be a leader in autonomous. And so the goal is every time their tech shows up in, let's make up somebody, Volkswagen. Then when you buy a Volkswagen with their tech in it, you can push the button and put it on the platform, just like a driver can do today. If you think about it, last thing I'll say, drivers today use two assets. They use their time and they use their car, and they make money as a result. In the future, you can imagine only having to use one of those, just your car, and it can kind of go up. But then still, someone has to clean it and all the rest. So it'll be quite complex and it'll take some time, but I think it's a real possibility.
I think it is so complex, and I don't think that there's a whole lot of attention to all those minutiae that matter to make this all work. I could talk forever about autonomous vehicles, but I also want to ask about you driving for Lyft, because I understand, kind of like undercover boss, you do that. I think we even have some pictures of this where you have been driving. Tell us why you do that, when you do that. You're CEO of a company. How do you manage to fit that in?
I don't know the answer to the last question. My wife asked the same question, what in the world? I mean, this is what so yes, I do this. About every 6 weeks, I get behind the wheel, and I never tell our comms group or whatever. That's just me taking a selfie at the end. And I will tell you just briefly that it is very fun as I'm dropping a person off to tell them who I am, and just all hell breaks loose. It's just where they'll be like, "Are you shitting me?" If you're shitting, I'm Googling you right now. Anyway, but so the reason I do it is because so the thing that I said from the day that I started this job, which is about 2 years ago, is customer obsession drives profitable growth. When I joined, we were not profitable, we were losing share, all sorts of bad things were happening. Now we're profitable, free cash flow positive, $700 million of free cash flow, pick you up 30 seconds, 40 seconds faster than the other guys, and on and on and on. And that comes from spending time with your customers. And I will say this, and maybe in the form of slightly advice or maybe just something to think about. It's so tempting to sit at your desk and sort of browse social media and take information in and think you're an expert, because of course I just read a couple of tweets about it, so therefore I know everything there is to know. But the problem with that is you're reading what other people are saying. You're reading what other companies maybe want you to see, all sorts of things. In the car, you're just finding out what it is drivers or riders care about. I hate surge pricing. Why? Oh, because I wake up in the morning at 7 o'clock, and if it's $20, I'll take a Lyft, but if it's $40, I'll drive myself, but I have to park, and I don't want to, and I've got donuts, and so it's kind of annoying, all these sort of things. And it's like, wow, okay, so I guess we should create this product called Price Lock, which allows you not to have to pay surge pricing anymore. So the insights that you get when you let other people do the talking and you do the listening, as opposed to the social media world where you're basically listening what other people want you to hear, totally different.
Another CEO, famous CEO who used to do this, Sam Walton. He used to drop in on Walmart stores all the time.
I do know that.
And really learned a lot.
I do know that. So I have visited Sam Walton's office in Bentonville, Arkansas, and very famously, he talks about in his book, literally walking down the aisles of Walmarts and picking up paper and talking to customers. And there's just absolutely no substitute for it. And particularly, I know I'm going on too much, but there's so much mediation. You think that you're getting good data, and I don't want to sound conspiratorial, it's not like that, but there's just no substitute to being face-to-face, listening to what people have to say and engaging with them in that way.
We like to wrap up our conversations at Axios with one fun thing. What was your first job before you were driving for Lyft?
Okay, I got that, and then I got another fun thing. Okay, my first job was I was a newspaper deliverer and I delivered a newspaper that perhaps some people here have know the Washington Post. So I got up at 5:15 in the morning, and at 5:30 I was out there with literally a newspaper I live in San Francisco now, that's where I live, but the mean streets of Bethesda, Maryland. Crazy thing. And literally putting papers on people's doors. And it was great, except for Wednesdays where all these coupons. Oh my God, are they heavy? Anyway, but yeah, it was amazing. And it really did teach me a certain, just like whatever it doesn't matter what it's like outside, you're doing it every single day.
It all started there.
It all started there. I'm still a newspaper reader. I'm still a big reader of journalism, so thank you for what you do.
Awesome. We're glad to hear it.
Of course.
All right, David Risher, thank you so much for coming to Axios today.
Fun.